Good afternoon, everyone. This is Aseem Mukhi from Data Security Council of India. I welcome one and all to this third webinar as part of the DSCI Cisco Thought Leadership Program. Now, before I begin, I would briefly like to talk about this initiative, which was a joint effort from Cisco and DSCI, and then I will introduce our panelists. So, over the years, it was realized that we needed a longer engagement from DSCI, which was an industry body, looking specifically to cater to data protection in India. And we wanted to work closely with the industry leaders on defining emerging requirements for the emerging threat landscape in India. So we tied up with Cisco and we launched a Security Thought Leadership Program in December last year. And we tried to get the industry together on one common platform and engage them in meaningful discussions and deliberations so that we could emerge with a clearer picture of how the security is evolving and what are the threats and how we need to counter them. So I would like to welcome all of you for the third webinar, and we would spend the next 30 minutes discussing and deliberating on the security challenges with respect to BYOD and mobility, which is also a critical piece in our reference architecture. The reference architecture is a document being created jointly by DSCI and Cisco with the help of over 40 CISOs from India, and we're trying to provide guidance in terms of the evolving role of security and the emerging challenges with respect to BYOD, virtualization, and cloud computing. So I would like to introduce our panelists for today. We have Mr. Atul Khatavkar, who is the Vice President for AGC Networks. We have Kingshuk Joshi, who is the AVP IT for AGC Networks. Mr. Srikanta Prasad, who is a Principal Consultant Cisco. And I am Aseem, I am a consultant and I work for Data Security Council of India. Atul, may I request you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
So my name is Atul Khatavkar. I head the Information Security and IT Governance Risk and Compliance Practice for AGC worldwide. That includes US, India, and all geos. I am myself, IT services professional with almost 25 plus years experience in IT services. I am CISA, CGIT, CDCP, and almost 10 certifications. I am lead auditor with DNV and TUV. I have been instrumental in auditing for security many companies in India. I have certified almost 50 plus companies in India. That includes TCS, Infosys, Wipro, PwC, and many companies for ISMS. Way back, I started the auditing career in 2003, and after that, I have touched almost all compliances that include, PCI, DSS, HIPAA from security perspective, ITIL, ISO 20000, PS25999, and so on and so forth. So I've been in this field for more than 15 years and extremely, experience in process side consulting as well as implementation of technologies such as SIEM, web application firewalls, and lead a team of more than 80 professionals worldwide, including all kinds of projects, consulting as well as implementation. Thank you, Aseem, and it will be very glad to talk to people, interact, and see what questions they have. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for joining in, Atul. We also have Kingshuk Joshi, who is the AVP IT for AGC Networks. Kingshuk, may I request you to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kingshuk, and I take care of the entire IT infrastructure for AGC Networks worldwide. We've been around a 25-year-old company here, and I've been taking care of entire infrastructure engineering as such to take care of all the AGC internal business needs. Prior to this, I was working with HP, and I was also in Wipro. And I have good around 16 years of experience, wherein I've done various roles, right from being a consultant to a lot of other companies. Thanks, Aseem.
Thank you, Kingshuk. We also have Srikanta Prasad, who is a principal consultant with Cisco. So Srikanta, may I also request you to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Aseem, Atul, and Kingshuk. Also, thanks everyone in the audience for taking your time to join this. So, this is Srikanta Prasad. I am a principal consultant for the security solutions portfolio for Cisco systems in India. I've been with Cisco for a short time, around 4 months now, but I've been associated with the security industry from past 16 years. Worked with companies like RSA, Target, Citrix, and Secure Computing. So that's about it. I will hand back to Wasim to kickstart this webinar.
Great. Thank you, Srikanta. And with this background, we'll get started. Just before we begin, I'd like to point out that if you have any questions during the course of the next 30 minutes, you can send them on the chat window, and we'll take them up during the Q&A session. And also, for any feedback and suggestions with respect to our program, and also for the webinar, you may write to thoughtleadership@dsci.in. So, we all know that enabling mobility requires a combination of mobile devices, wireless connectivity, applications, and portals to facilitate information exchange. Just to look at that graphic in front of you, this really defines the paradigm shift which is happening. Employees are demanding, and they're bringing newer devices to work, and we really need to find out if the IT team is ready to support it. There is some sort of initial movement towards Indian enterprises adopting mobility. However, it's more of a mindset change which needs to happen. So really, what's the problem about? We've seen earlier that organizations have they had their own devices which were secure to some extent because the policies there were standardized, the features were well understood, the capabilities of the device were well understood. So IT had more control over managing and using these devices. What's changed now is the employees are bringing their own devices ranging from an iPad to an Android phone, and there is a plethora of devices available in the market. And each device may probably have a different OS version which is being run. And really the problem with IT is still the same. They need to manage devices which they don't own now. They don't really understand all of these devices. They've not really tested all of these devices. However, all the support and all the functionality which needs to be enabled for the user needs to come from the IT and needs to be driven from them. So this is a challenge which is facing organizations. We all understand, I think this has pretty much been discussed in every forum, in every white paper that you might have read on BYOD and mobility. There are several advantages both for the enterprise and for its users for embracing BYOD and for embracing mobility. We would not like to discuss too much on these. However, just for reference sake, we are all aware that if our customer service people or our sales people or people on the field have access to mobile devices and to our enterprise information, we will cut down on the customer service times and the delivery times. So thereby, it will also impact the satisfaction level of our customers, and it will improve the delivery times. We will thereby help and enhance productivity of our staff. There are many people who travel often and who are on the move, so they might require mobility and BYOD to be able to contribute effectively while they're on the move. So just to briefly look at the trend of adoption of BYOD in India, DSCI and Cisco conducted a brief survey. We interacted with about 100 CISOs in India through various engagement channels, and the figures that you see in front of you are reflected from that survey. So we asked CISOs if they were ready to move on to adopting BYOD and what is really the trend. And it's not surprising to see that there is a clear movement with organizations adopting BYOD and embracing BYOD. Now, I briefly touched upon the factor in the first slide where we saw the problem emerging from the movement from corporate-owned devices to employee-owned devices. We've looked at the business drivers, and these are some of the security challenges which we will discuss going forward, and we will try and see how we can gain from the expertise of Atul Kinshuk and Srikanta to understand more on these security challenges. So broadly, there are 8 challenges that we can classify with respect to, if we need to classify security challenges. So there are challenges with respect to identification. There are challenges with respect to provisioning of devices. You want to create visibility. You want to support newer devices. And the other bigger problem here is diagnosing all of those devices that you've allowed into your corporate architecture, scanning and testing their configurations to make sure that they are standardized and as per your organization's policy, quarantining devices which are out of line with the security posture of your organization, and more or less governance issues with ensuring that all the devices are in line with our security setup. So, Srikanta, if you could briefly address this and describe how do you see these security challenges impacting organization and the adoption of BYOD?
Yeah, look, to start with, on the adoption, front, if you see, sometime back and even now, in most of the cases, if you think of work, it's basically we think of going to a place and do, our daily chores on a professional front. So when somebody says that, he has work to do, he has to go to work. So they have in mind, they have an office, they have a cubicle, they sit in front of the computer or the laptop, and they start doing their work. But that is changing very rapidly. And the change is actually being, the catalyst for this change is the new mobile computing, especially on the tablets and the mobile, smartphone front. If you see with the smartphone and the tablet kind of a device, employees generally have everything what they need to do their work in their hand. So they don't have to go to a place to do their work. So the entire definition of workplace has changed, and it's a new revolution that's happening. And one of the reasons is the cost of these devices is coming down day by day, and giving more and more power in the hands of the users. This is going to be continuing, and it's going to in fact explode even further and penetrate even deeper into the workforce. So that's how the scenario has changed and how the adoption rate has been picking up. But as you said, Asim, there are a lot of challenges here. Now, first and foremost, before we get into the technology challenges, there are some psychological barriers and challenges. For example, user expectations. Whenever if I'm used to a set of experiences when I work, a set of applications that load onto my computer in a certain way. When I have my own smartphone or tablet, I expect the same experience onto my device. So there could be a mismatch between the expectation and the experience that's there, because the applications may not be ready, and there could be different reasons, network issues or application related issues, related issues, which could hamper the experience that the user may expecting. And then you have the fragmentation of the marketplace. So there are so much choice of operating systems and devices, right from iOS, Apple iOS, to Android, to RIM, to Windows. And it's really confusing to the user, and even much more confusing and worrying to the IT infrastructure. Because for example, Google licenses the Android operating system to device manufacturers. Then they actually change the form factor, they change the look and feel. So IT has a big headache on its hands and a challenge on its hands to ensure that all of these different flavors and different operating systems and different forms and different form factors has to be brought into their policy, landscape, and has to be, managed and maintained. So this is the fragmentation is one of the challenges. And then you have different problems like legality and privacy issues. Now, since I'm user who would like to use my own device, both for my personal work and for the professional or for my job, then there's a big issue of privacy. So how private is my personal data? Does the IT organization have an insight to that? How do you ensure that personal and privacy, personal and professional data is segregated, and ensure that only professional data is in the IT operations? Then about legality of mixing these two. What about concerns like PCI DSS and SOX or HIPAA? How do you handle that? So these are some of the technical challenges that are there today. That IT organization needs to have a good insight into. I'm sure customers like AGC, where Atul has taken lead. I'm sure he will be able to throw in some more light on this. So Atul, over to you to share your views on this.
Hey, thanks, Shrikanta. It was very good. The point you've mentioned here is something which I would like to emphasize. Is the first challenge in this BYOD. What we have been seeing is change management. So change, the way you work and the way it happens after you deploy BYOD is totally different. So there is always a resistance. Now, what we have been seeing over the past 6 months or a year is we had a lot of challenges in terms of managing the change from end users perspective, as well as from the system admin team who needs to really kind of upgrade their skills from what they were doing in the past. So change management is something which touches technical as well as non-technical issues. One needs to really look at it and plan for their environment, how effective and smooth those changes would be once you deploy BYOD. The second foremost important thing which we always observe is training, because once you know that you are changing the landscape, you are changing the infrastructure, the user access, the front end, what you see, the way you access changes, and therefore it becomes very imperative to train all the users from accessing, storing, and certain security policies they need to adhere. Very important from users' perspective. And the other thing is, of course, technical admin side, where they need to really see, how effective the monitoring becomes, and so those kind of trainings are very important. So change management is the first, training is another. The third thing one needs to really look at is monitoring, because once you start, deploying this, you need to also monitor carefully, what is happening on the network, what is happening on my applications. Are there, kind of users who are authenticating, are the users you want, and so on and so forth. So it's a big kind of challenge. You need to have that process and system both in place, technology as well as process in place, to really deploy technology as well as keep on auditing it on a frequent basis, so that you know what is happening on the network. The fourth important challenge I feel is mobile device management, because as Shrikanta mentioned, you have too much of choice from the devices perspective, the OS perspective, manufacturer's perspective. But one needs to really see what is effective and what is going to be the kind of preferences or priorities that I have from business side, and then restrict certain usage, and therefore you need to have mobile device management strategy also in place. There are few things we have also seen is certain issues you can't predict. So issues that we say typically as you go, we have seen a lot of unforeseen business process changes needs to be carried out, and you need to be prepared for such kind of events. Also, while deploying this, one may see that there is a cost benefit from user perspective and devices perspective. The cost gets shifted on the network side. So you need more and more bandwidth. You need to plan so many other things for really making this BYOD successful. And therefore, cost monitoring also becomes very important. You need to really plan the cost very well in advance, and also see that you are meeting those objectives with the milestones that you are achieving after this project is kicked off. So these are kind of 5-6 challenges we always have seen in all kinds of implementation. Of course, we have done this implementation at AGC, and we also have helped several other enterprises for making their BYOD successful. So this is what I would say that challenges from BYOD perspective. Asim, can you?
Thank you, Atul. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Atul, and thank you, Srikanta. Now, with respect to specific areas like when you look at the device, typically where I'm trying to come from is the first step where an organization would feel that what if I say yes to BYOD today? How many devices am I going to be flooded with? How am I going to really manage the diverse set of devices which employees will bring? How will I effectively monitor all of these devices? How will I effectively provision all of these devices into my system? How would I ensure the identity of the user using the device? And then again, I think Srikanta briefly mentioned, and Atul, you also mentioned on segregating the corporate data and segregating the user's data and issues of privacy concerned with that. So a brief comment on the first step where there's a humongous task and humongous challenge in front of organizations as they open up their policies and they allow users to step in with their own devices. How are they trying to manage and cope up with this challenge of devices? So Srikanta, first from you.
Yeah, thanks, Reem. I think, they are all very practical and, challenges that we see day to day. And also, IT organizations are facing this day in, day out and trying to reinvent the way they've been operating. And if you see, these challenges have been there in some form or the other, right from, a long period of time. The only thing is they are now getting manifested onto the BYOD, type of initiatives. So some of the approaches that, we could think is, before we actually go to the BYOD implementation thing is, first and foremost, how do you authenticate, or rather before authenticate, how do you do a profiling of device that's coming onto the network? Then how do you authenticate? How do you do a post-check? And then how do you give the right set of authorization controls and permissions that the user would get if it would come on a wired or a wireless network? So all these authentication, authorization, profiling has to be seamless, and has to be consistent across the different connection points to the network. So that's very important because that is where it's easy for us to, as IT security professionals, when we think we should always stop the intruder at the gate itself. Don't allow him to come in and create more mess and more complexities. So that's a very critical aspect that has to be kept in mind. Apart from that, as you said, partitioning. So by creating a virtual barrier, between personal data and corporate data, IT organizations can ensure that users can get proper access to corporate data while still they have their personal data separate and untouched. So if it is done in if it is a good process that's been followed to do this partitioning, so then in fact IT can actually give the wipe data wipe facility or the freedom to the users themselves to ensure that they are aware of what they're wiping and ensuring that corporate data is kept confidential. And one of the other aspects to keep in mind when deploying a BYOD is to ensure that we have a application catalog or something like that, because to reduce the possibility of employees downloading applications, so I have a smartphone, I have access to internet, and I need some application to do my stuff. So if I don't have it, then I'll download it. Now the big downside of this downloading is you don't have control on what's coming down, because the application may have malware and other compromised, botnets inside it, and it may compromise the mobile device, and then in turn it can compromise the entire IT infrastructure. So to reduce the chances of downloading a malware and a botnet, it's always advisable that the IT organization has some view into the application landscape, and then have published this application catalog so that users can download it internally instead of going out and compromising everything. Then also IT could now come out with something called support device list. So basically, today if you see BYOD is actually evolving to BYOSD or CYOD. So when I say BYOSD, it's bring your own supported device. So I, as an IT organization, can say that I'm going to support mobile devices, tablets, but I'm going to support only Android. I can only support Windows. So that you set the parameter, you set the agenda, telling users that when you are going to choose your device or bring your device, please bring within these set of devices, so that me as an IT organization can have better control on what's coming in, and also I can put my team to work effectively. I mean, instead of supporting everything under the sun, let us sit down and decide what we will support and then support them in a good way. So I think that is one more thing to keep in mind before we actually roll out this. Then also identify what is going to be the IT application development plan. What is needed to develop applications that would be used in a mobile landscape. So mobile apps is one thing. So if you have any clarity on how do we do that, because that's going to increase, it's never going to decrease. More and more applications are now being developed for the mobile phones than they are, for the normal IT user. And apart from the very, very heavy ERP type applications, which may also come in at a later stage, most of the applications today are, being developed for the mobile space also. Then another thing that I could think of is, mobile device management. How do we manage devices which are coming on? As I said earlier, for the profiling and the posturing, checks. Then how do we have in DLP, data loss prevention solutions today? Do they scale to the mobile or the BYOD, landscape? If users come in, how do we ensure our data loss prevention policies are enforced onto the mobile device also? So, this is one more critical aspect of the security that people have to keep in mind. So these were some of the things, and one more thing I would think of was mobile application management. So how do we manage these applications?
Correct. So correctly pointed out, Srikanth.
I would hand over to Atul or Hasim to take it over from here.
Right. So before Atul, we get your comment, I'd like to quickly look at the findings here. So as part of the survey that we initially discussed, we also asked security leaders what their top concerns were with respect to adoption of BYOD and mobility. Not surprising, the top two concerns which emerged out of this interaction, one was about threat and malware protection, because they foresaw newer ways of newer vulnerabilities coming in through use of mobile devices. And the second was enforceability of network policy on mobile devices, how they would seamlessly ensure that all enterprise security practices are extended to the mobile devices which users bring in. So looking at these security concerns, Atul, so I think Srikanth has described the challenges with respect to devices and how they, what is the first steps to looking at device incorporation. So from a threat perspective, would you like to comment on emerging threats, or if there are any newer vulnerabilities that you see which will come in as newer devices are introduced into the enterprise architecture? Over to you, Atul.
Yeah, actually, what he mentions is absolutely correct. And when we actually started the implementation, and even before that, we started planning about BYOD, we had kind of a lot of planning went into it, and we came out with a very good strategy as to what we should do. So from vulnerabilities perspective, what we see is it's a big challenge now, because you have so many manufacturers, so many different kind of devices, and it becomes very impractical to allow everyone to bring everything into the organization. So I would say threats are changing, threats are kind of emerging at very rapid stage, and the only solution what I see in this whole scenario is limit the usage of devices, and that's the right strategy, I would say, as Shrikanta also mentioned, that one needs to really see is what business needs and allow probably top 2 or 3 OSs and devices so that you don't expose too much onto the other threats. And that's the key takeaway and learnings what we had from the whole implementation.
Thank you, Atul. So moving forward, we would briefly discuss the approaches that an organization can take towards enabling mobility and BYOD, and then we will step into discussing the implementation case study for AGC, which Kingshuk will take. Before we get to the case study, just brief comment on some ways that organizations should approach, in enabling BYOD. So, the 3 approaches that we've listed here. One is virtualization, where we could use the mobile device as a thin client, use the computing resources on that device. However, to an extent where the device is only allowed to access data from a virtual desktop or from a virtual server. We could create sandboxes where corporate information can be securely kept in a space on the mobile device, which space is limited to access by any third-party application, or the employees cannot really upload that information from their personal accounts or use it for any other purpose apart from using it with a corporate application. Or we could have a liberal policy where we have commingled data on the user device, and there are no clear demarcation in terms of storage of that corporate data and segregating it from user data. However, the third approach might require very stringent control and monitoring over how the user uses and accesses that data and what is being really done by it. So before we proceed to the AGC case study, Atul, from you, just a brief comment on the approaches towards mobility and BYOD.
Yeah, thanks, Asim. The foremost thing what we did was to evolve a mobile strategy with changing our information security policy, ISMS policy. We started including BYOD policy. The 4 key things that we have thought over a long time, and we revolved the whole implementation around those points. Very important points. I'll run one by one. The first one is virtualization. When we started talking about the whole BYOD, we narrowed down to one single point, that we will not allow our data to be accessed as if what people are were doing earlier. So data will be always available onto the virtual server. So we do not allow any data, corporate data, to be to be downloaded onto their devices or individual devices. So that was the point we started with, actually, and we thought that this would be the right strategy, because data always remains with the company in the data center, and we'll take care of all access related issues like network bandwidth upgradation and so on and so forth. So the whole strategy revolved around virtualization. That was very key starter for us, and we all agreed that from the security perspective, we would always like our data, company data, to be available, accessed by all employees, but it should remain with the company all the time. Then the next thing is limiting devices. As I said, we narrowed down onto few devices, few manufacturers, and limiting our vulnerabilities, or you can say our own exposure to outside threats that we do not know. So we have limited the usage in terms of number of manufacturer and number of OSs. The third thing is, we always said that the whole antivirus management will be done by the company. We will not allow individual things to run on their own. So antiviruses are completely controlled by us. And the fourth, the very important thing is, the monitoring and auditing standards were changed, and we have tuned the whole auditing process, monitoring process, to make sure that whatever is happening on the network side, on the application side, is tightly monitored and reported as we go on ongoing process. So these are the four things we thought over very meticulously of long time, and then the whole thing revolved around those four issues, and we came out with the policy, and we came out with the different solutions, accepted certain things. But today, if you see, the key driver and the key thing in the whole implementation is the data is remaining with us. Even though it is accessed from anywhere, the data remains with us. So custodians are we, and access is given from anywhere, from any device, and employees are happy with the scenario today. So we can run with the case study and go ahead with the case study.
So over to you, Kingshuk. If you could take the audience through specific instances where agency faced, Atul briefly described the background. He's given us a good background in terms of what were the criteria for evaluation, what was the thought process behind adoption, and how you went about doing it. But if you could give us more details and specifics, and we could discuss the implementation at agency. Over to you, Kingshuk.
Thanks, Asim. I think Shrikanta and Atul, both of them have actually said a lot of things about BYOD challenges and other stuff, and I do agree with most of them. So when we started our BYOD journey, the first few eminent things which was taken up to the management, and that is what is being seen on your screen. The important part, what we realized, and we accepted a cognizance to the fact that every user is now become more and more mobile. They are open to test new technologies, and minimum 2 devices each person carries along with him. It could be a phone, a hand phone, it could be a tablet and a hand phone, it could be a tablet and a laptop, or maybe 3 of them all together, and a lot of things. And with the smartphones growing up better, it was becoming more and more challenging for us when they wanted to have an email access on their phone, or they wanted to have some kind of a data access, which was where they are sitting at a remote place. Second, what was very eminent to us was the converged workplace. It was the need for a future growth in our business. Our business was looking at it to grow up faster. So we wanted to have a network place which is more and more converged and better for the end users to work. And lastly was we wanted to have our business infrastructure. This is purely from the infrastructure standpoint, where we wanted to be a device agnostic. We did just want to be a part of just the entire setup infrastructure is only on an OEM A or an OEM B. It was not like that, so we wanted to have it more device agnostic, as well as pretty more mashed up kind of thing. And we did not want to compromise on security. That was primarily on the data and the network. So how did we go about it? Can I have the next slide, please? So while implementing the BYOD, we took first and foremost, as Atul mentioned, there were those core 4 points which were the primary key drivers to define a BYOD policy. The first and the foremost, we ensured that we set up what applications do you need to cover. What is the price of the laptop or a device or any kind of an external device which needs to be given to an employee, or an employee brings his own laptop. It could be a sharing basis with the company, or it could be his own laptop. All such things, areas have to be specified. The application coverage was a must, because if you do not define your applications, the version problems, for example, an Android ice cream sandwich and an Android jelly bean are two different things. They act differently, they behave differently. So that becomes a more challenging for you when you want to control it. third point, which was very, very important for us, was to assess the risk and establish a plan for an information security, because the aim objective or the end objective here was to ensure that the data, whatever is residing in our company, our IP material, is residing with us. It does not get carried out and it is out of the organization. So, and fourth and the fifth were primarily to define and specify which devices you can carry in and you can limit their usage. Mainly were the softwares, what kind of softwares you can do it, and limit to the usage. So when we actually set this BYOD policy, we sent it across to all the end users. We realized that there were few more tweaks which were required, and then accordingly those changes were done on the BYOD policy. When it came to the implementation plan, it was very, very humongous for us to define in a 1,000-strong employee force to find which kind of an application an end user is using on the laptop, how he's doing it. So that entire implementation plan defined each user with the type of application he was using, what kind of profiling is the person is going to act on, whether he's a sales profile, is a pre-sales profile, whether he's on a support function, what was the detailing, what was the end activity which he was doing, was all detailed out in that implementation plan. Then we split those categories very, very cleanly when we went on an implementation stage. We didn't look forward to just have a kind of an understanding between our teams. Each of the teams which are on the implementation front were clearly defined a specific set of categories, where a sales guy would have this set of product or a virtualization piece being implemented on his devices. Person B would, or category B person would have set of very clear infrastructure piece which would be defined, or a virtualization piece which would be defined. And very, very importantly is the training to the end users. That was core part, and we actually invested a lot of time in training to the end users, because whenever you are bringing out something new, the resistance from the end users is a foregone conclusion. We at our side, we were very clear that yes, we would find a lot of resistance from a lot of the users, and that is where we set up repeated trainings for end users to ensure that it is accepted at all levels by all of them. Then, so when we look at this entire thing, it started, it took us around close to 6 months when we were able to give some kind of a stability thing, overcoming all the teething solutions. Eventually we find that the benefits of BYOD is pretty clear. You have ensured that the user mobility is pretty much, you have enabled the user mobility to them. They are very happy with the kind of usage. Whenever they have to connect to Citrix, they are using their own network and other stuff. The user awareness on data security has become more and more eminent. People are aware that data security is a must. Their own private data is so very important to them, as well as official data is an official data, and I don't need to mingle around with that. The good part, when we put up a mobile device management and a NAC kind of segregation to our network, we were able to identify a lot of rogue devices which were coming inside. The detection was pretty quick, and the quarantine was more in a controlled manner because of this, because we also did a network infrastructure overhaul where we implemented certain set of new monitoring devices, the way of how Atul had just mentioned. And today, at least with BYOD, I am more clear with the IT investment, what I have to do, what is the kind of investment I am supposed to do in the near future, and what is the kind of devices would come into my network. And I'm more and more open and clear that what are the new things which would add up to my network and whether I'm ready for it or not, because monitoring is the key here. So a repeated monitoring is a must. And lastly, with the key learnings, I think the journey towards developing a device agnostic architecture is still ongoing. I don't say I have reached the goal, but yes, I am on an ongoing phase. We are doing our best to ensure and manage all the kind of challenges what we find. There are many typical security challenges which come with managing access and identifying our devices. There are many of them, and we every day as it comes on, we take on those challenges. And that's it from my side.
Thank you, Kingshuk. I'm sure the members of the audience and people who are logged in today will be able to use these learnings and findings and the approach that AGC used to help their organizations have a secure adoption and implementation for BYOD. Now, just moving forward, before we conclude, we could, I think, summarize the discussion and look at the 4 pillars of securing BYOD. So primarily we have the area of device security, where we would want to look at a safe configuration, a safe profile, ensure that all policies and the correct applications are in place. We would want to limit the number of features which a user can use to secure data. Probably, let's say we do not allow NFC to transfer any files, or we bar users from using Bluetooth. Similarly, there could be mobile device management capabilities for selective wipe or remote wipe of data, or remote access to the mobile device in case it's lost or stolen. For data security, we have, we can bring about encryption which will secure our data when it's in transit or when it's at rest. We will try and look at containerization of data, segregate our corporate data from the user-owned data, and also restrict content transfer across domains, looking at legal considerations and some regulatory considerations like Srikanth and Atul pointed out previously. Then, Kingshuk, you also mentioned monitoring of those devices once they've been granted access is an important aspect of securing BYOD. There is also an issue where users might jailbreak and they might root devices to customize functionality, something which might be averse to our organization's security posture. And lastly, issues with governance of those devices, getting a dashboard which provides you the adequate amount of visibility, alerts you in time, and logs user activity which could be used for actionable intelligence. So just towards the end, Srikanta, from you, concluding words and a summary of the discussion. Srikanta?
Hello.
Yes, Srikanta.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just started. Anyway, I started. So thanks, everyone, Asim and Kinshuk and Atul for sharing all these details. So before concluding, I would like to reiterate that, IT organizations have this big challenge, but there is no going back. This initiative and these technology changes are here to stay. From a IT security perspective, I would suggest, or rather, I would like to share that about the authentication, authorization, and the policy implementation, which has to be consistent and seamless all across. So I would say, keep the bad guys out and right in front. So there are other aspects to the whole BYOD security, challenges, but once we ensure that we let only the right guys in with the right kind of authorization. I think other security challenges would be easier to manage. So that's how I would like to log off with this comments. Atul.
Atul, any concluding words and some guidance from your end to our listeners today?
Yeah, I must say thanks to everyone. The thing is that, as I said, that the foremost learning that we had is spend good time in planning, because it's very important that, although it may delay some kind of implementation, but spend good time on planning is to, what you want to achieve out of that, what applications you want to give access, how they will be accessed, and, where the data will reside, how you will protect that is very important. As I said again, these four factors we considered very important for us. Similarly, every organization can definitely define is what is that they are looking for, have key 4 or 5 objectives to work on, and then evolve the strategy of BYOD around it, change the ISMS policy, and keep on doing internal audits very regularly, so that exactly where the things are there, how controls are working, are there any lapses in the controls, and therefore you can rectify those things. So it was good learning for all of us, and as Kinshuk said, that we every day we also are learning new things. New challenges are happening, and then we are kind of evolving out of that initial implementation to getting more and more mature. So that's what I can say about the whole BYOD implementation and our learnings. And thanks, Asim, for calling us out here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for accepting that invite and sharing your expertise with us and the audience. So just before we take questions from the participants, Kingshu, can I have closing remarks from you and probably some guidance for everyone who's tuned in today?
Not much to say because I think Shrikanta and Atul have actually covered a lot of things. So the policy, the planning is a must, and I hope people who have taken up this session to understand more about BYOD need to understand this very, very clearly. Right from the time you get a management go ahead for a BYOD, planning is the key here, and the monitoring is the second step, which actually helps you make it more and more better end user experience for this. Thanks, Asim. Thanks, Asim.
Thank you. So we have a question. Before we get on to questions, just on a lighter note, I found this pretty amusing. Organization's policy misunderstood by an employee and taken to the next level. So this is something which which routinely in our discussion comes up, where organizations who've embraced BYOD experience extreme circumstances and they have to review the whole thing over again. So questions now. We have a question which has come in from Shaila Odupa. Shaila has asked, how do you ensure data cleanup when user quits the organization? So Atul, Kingshu.
Yeah, sure. So, Shaila, to answer your question, when a user quits the organization, very importantly, we have deployed the MDM solution is one. So there is an internal process on which when a quit employee or an employee goes out of my organization and when he quits it, I get an intimation right from HR, and that's where my entire IT machinery starts working. So we have set of people who are defined to do set of activities right from an email disablement, accessing the mobile device and removing it. The mobile device management software itself is designed and is worked in such a fashion that it can actually do a remote wipe right from the software device itself, and also the disablement of the accesses to my SharePoint portals and other stuff. So this is what is there is a set process on how we follow, and that's how we do, remove it. And let me tell you, we've got a 99.9% success ratio in that. Does that answer your question, Shaila?
Shaila, unfortunately, all the other participants are on mute. They can only respond on chat. Shaila, in case you need further clarification, do write in. We have another question from Anant Rai. Anant wants to know, what about if people have been transferred from one business unit to another?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, let me take this. Typically, whenever there is a transfer from a business unit A to business unit B, my infrastructure today, if you say it is across geos and it is a centralized infrastructure at one place, so even if a person goes from a space A to space B, I have already predefined sections for each geographies, and that's how I just move it on the mobile device management and on my email boxes. So it's just a movement from a server A to server B. That's it. That's not much of a challenge. We again have a process around it, and we follow that process every time.
So again, Anand, if there are any clarifications of that, please do write in. So we have another question from Shahid Sheikh. Shahid wants to know, how do we promptly respond to securing our data in case the device is stolen or lost?
First and the foremost, we expect, as per in BYOD policy, we have defined this, that whenever a device is stolen or lost, the end user has to inform IT very clearly that the device has been lost. What is the first thing is being done is email ID and other specific things are kept on a disable mode, so that no other access is being there, and from the mobile device management tool we actually do a security wipe and a disablement of that device. Once he buys a new device, the enablement process takes place.
Asim, I just want to explain here again is the key data that we always came out, as I said initially, is the revolvement of our BYOD is on data being residing in our data center and our server. So key data, which is very business specific, important, always remains in the business environment and it doesn't go onto the mobile device. What we have given is the access from mobile device through Citrix to that data. So even the device is lost, we are not much worried on company data, because he is not allowed to copy the data from a Citrix environment to his device. So from data security perspective, and even in the event of device getting lost, we are not much kind of affected, because data is always residing with us.
Okay, I hope that answers the. I hope the question is answered. The thing is, Atul, they can only respond to me on chat, so in case they have any clarification, I'll. So another question which has come up from Rahul, he wants to know that would you have different set of policies for people on the field when they require to use BYOD and people within the organization, and what are the challenges in segregating those policy levels?
Actually, we do not have those two different policies, because here we are expecting everyone to bring at least 2 or 3 devices, whether they are sitting in office or outside. For us, it really doesn't matter, because they are given access through Citrix. So it really doesn't matter for us whether they are sitting on LAN or whether they are going outside office anywhere on the roaming.
Yeah, Srikanta, would you like to add on to any of these questions? Any you would like to add on?
The last question, regarding policies, of course, the policies would change or would have to change based on the parameters like who's the user, where is he coming from, what is the device he's trying to access, what is the network that he's trying to come from. So the network has to be intelligent enough to understand all these different contexts of the user. Who, what, where, when, how, and then be able to apply policies based on these different parameters. Just to give a small example, if I'm connecting onto the corporate network using my corporate laptop, then I'll have full access to whatever business applications and business resources I need. But if I go out and connect from a coffee shop, then using my tablet PC, then naturally the policy will change to ensure that I don't get access to the same set of applications with the same set of access. So that's the point I have to make.
Right. So I think with that we will bring our session today to a close. Thank you, Atul, Kingshuk, and Srikanta for your valuable inputs. I'm sure the participants and the audience were able to identify with the problems that you pointed out, and they were able to understand the specific areas and solutions that you've discussed during the last 1 hour. If we have any more questions, we'll be glad to answer them. You can write into thoughtleadership@dsci.in. And for the benefit of everyone tuned in today, I would just like to mention that DSCI and Cisco are about to come up with a reference architecture document which will provide specific guidance on what are the security issues with respect to virtualization, cloud computing, and BYOD mobility. This document aims to provide a certain level of clarity and use case scenarios. So this is something which will come up in the next 30 to 35 days. We'll be launching it publicly and will be available for free download. So until then, I thank you. Thanks to everyone who's joined in today and who's given us their valuable time. And thank you again to the panelists for taking out time to share their experiences with us.
Thanks, Asim.
Thanks, Asim.